Hey guys, it's the Tominator. Today I wanted to talk about the classic physique. I know it's been a couple months since the Olympia, but a few of you guys have been asking me to cover this, so why not? Let's do it. First off, I want to say I was very impressed with these guys. I know they had this division last year as well. I believe that's when they introduced it back in 2016, but I didn't really pay attention to it then. And even this year, truth be told, I only caught the second night because they featured these guys before the Mr. Olympia prejudging. But yeah, I'll tell you what, these are some great looking physiques, no doubt. Much more accessible to the average viewer because, unlike the bloated mass monsters in the open class, these guys actually look athletic. They look more like superheroes and less like monstrous, muscle-bound freaks. No disrespect to the open class, but you gotta admit there is a certain freak factor there going on, and it's just not as appealing to the general population. So I think that this division strikes a great middle ground between fitness models and modern-day Olympia bodybuilders. I also loved all the old-school posing on display, so yeah, count me as a fan of classic physique. And this was perhaps my favorite part right here when they spun him around and we got the side-angle view. I've done videos on this sort of thing in the past, but I always love to point it out again for the slow learners out there, so take note of these midsections in the back double biceps. Do you see any beach balls here? Anybody looking ready to give birth? No, I didn't think so. So once again, the moral of the story here is that turning around, turning your back to the audience, that's no excuse to let your gut hang out. You gotta keep it tight and in check at all times. That's just what good posers do. In fact, most of these guys wouldn't have a gut even if they relaxed completely, so that's a big part of it too. You can only play the mass game up to a certain point before you start spilling over and compromising your midsection. But enough on that. So as you probably know, Breon Ansley there in the center ended up winning. Chris Bumstead, the tall guy to the left, took second. George Peterson, hitting the twisting back double bi, placed third. Arash Rabar on the left was fourth, and Danny Hester on the right finished in fifth. So these were your top five, and it was a stacked lineup, highly competitive. For the record, I agree with the judge's decision here, and I'm proud to say I actually called every top five placing right before they announced it. Now, unfortunately, there's no proof of that claim because I wasn't doing a live stream or anything. I wasn't recording my reactions at the time, so you'll just have to take my word on that. Or not, it's your choice, but I do feel it was a pretty predictable outcome. The main controversy seems to be that a lot of people feel that Bumstead, hitting the side chest here, should have won it. And I'll give my 2 cents on that in a minute. First, I wanted to touch on Danny Hester, last year's champion. Now, is it just me, or does this dude remind you of Lee Labrada? Like an older, slightly leaner version? I don't know, just his shorter frame and proportions, the way he hits poses, just looks very similar to me. He definitely kind of stole a couple moves from Labrada. Now, I know Lee didn't invent this pose, and Danny Hester definitely doesn't look as impressive in these couple comparisons I just whipped together, but keep in mind these images of Lee are Photoshop pics, photoshoot pics. I was going to say they may be Photoshopped as well, slightly touched up to make his arms look a little bit bigger or what have you. Point is, it's not an exact resemblance, and Hester is not quite on Labrada's level, but there still is a comparison to be made here, I think. And there he is again in an impressive modified back double biceps, standing next to the top two. I think we can all agree that Bumstead stole the show, though, with that vacuum. This shot for him was epic. This was the best vacuum pose since Tony Pearson, and if you don't know who that is, go look him up right now. But basically, this is shades of Frank Zane. Not too many bodybuilders, even back in the day, could pull off a vacuum in the ab and thigh. That's extremely difficult to do, especially when you raise your arms overhead like that, so mad props to this kid. He's only 22 and looks poised to be the future of this division. But before we get into that showdown, we gotta mention Flex Wheeler's comeback. This was very similar to what Levrone did last year at the 2016 Mr. Olympia. Both legendary 90s bodybuilders coming back out of retirement in their 50s for one last hurrah. And while this is certainly impressive for someone in his 50s, let's face it, it's not even close to vintage Flex Wheeler. His legs are down, the calves are nearly non-existent, his waist is wider, the V-taper has dwindled. The arms and the shoulders are pretty much the only body parts that held up reasonably well. I mean, his back has good detail in this shot, I suppose, and his conditioning was pretty on point, but the shape, the lines, the symmetry, it's just not the same. Nor was it for Kevin Levrone. That's just the unfortunate nature of aging, man. You can't hold it off forever. You can't stay in prime shape like you were in your 20s. So Still, my hat is off to Flex for getting up there and competing again against some of these guys who are like half his age and still managing to pull it off as well as he did. So that's a major achievement. It's something he should be proud of, and it should also be a big inspiration for all the older guys out there as well, I'm sure. But now let's take a closer look at the top two and kind of break this thing down. So the real battle here was between Breon Ansley and Chris Bumstead. Now, both look phenomenal, and to be honest, I wouldn't have had a problem if they gave it to Chris instead. It was definitely very close. From the front, I think Bumstead was actually better. He looked a bit sharper, his V-taper and X-frame definitely edges out Breon's, but the one thing that Breon has is a bit more mass through the thighs and arms. Now, Bumstead's a taller guy, so his limbs might technically be bigger if you were to measure them. Like, if you put a tape measure around his biceps, maybe they're bigger than Breon's, but remember now, bodybuilding is all about illusions, right? And Breon's arms and legs look a little bigger here relative to the rest of his body, so I think his proportions are a bit better in that regard. Don't get me wrong, Bumstead still looked tremendous, and he was solid from the side as well. He might even beat Breon in the side tricep and side chest poses. I don't know because I wasn't able to find any good pics of him hitting it, so there's not much to go on here. Let's move on. The ab and thigh, though, is no contest. Even when Bumstead's not doing that amazing vacuum, his abs are just so much more defined. His waist is more streamlined as well. He even looks slightly sharper overall, although that could just be a result of the different zoom levels between these two pictures. But regardless, Chris Bumstead wins this pose by a mile. Breon's thighs are great, but his abs just look too faded and leave a lot to be desired. You know, I would expect pretty much everybody in this division to have razor-sharp abs, and he's just not really bringing that. From the back, though, this is why Bumstead lost, okay? Breon's back double bicep is just better. His back is thicker and more detailed. His arms are bigger. This pose, more than any other, is the one that makes or breaks you. So in order for Bumstead to win, there's two key areas I'd like to see him improve. Number one would, of course, be that back. I mean, he's got the width, he's got the V-taper. What he needs now is more detail, more thick, mature development, like what Ansley's showing. And that'll probably come with time. I mean, the back is one of the slowest body parts to develop because it's very difficult to achieve a proper mind-muscle connection to it, and there's just so much surface area to work with here. It's like a quarter of your entire body almost, if you think about it. So I wouldn't expect a 22-year-old kid to have a world-class back yet. That's probably just not going to happen. But I think Bumstead also needs to bring up his arms. They looked a little small from the front and side, but in this pose, they look downright undersized. So if he can address these two areas and bring the same level of conditioning next year, I think we'll be looking at a new champion, honestly. Because from the front, this Frank Zane vacuum is so exceptional, man. It's almost like just give him the title for that alone. This is the best artistic pose I've seen in ages. Breon had some good ones too, though, as we can see him here also channeling his inner Frank Zane. And that's what I love about this new class, is the return of all these lost arts and classic poses that have been extinct for decades now. We finally get to see guys pulling off vacuums and bringing the art back into bodybuilding again. It's great stuff. Breon could also do the splits, and he was hitting all sorts of different poses down there. So this was a nice touch to his posing and helped him stand out from the pack. So I do think he was a deserving winner this year. Bumstead's back and arms were just a little too weak compared to this guy, so I totally get why it ended up the way it did. But at the same time, I can see why some fans would be frustrated that Bumstead wasn't crowned the winner, because he's got the look. He's definitely got a champion-worthy physique, and that vacuum pose was a real breath of fresh air in this day and age of bloated bubble guts and hideous herniated belly buttons. So anyway, that's my take on the 2017 Mr. Olympia Classic Physique. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys. If so, feel free to like and subscribe for more. And until next time, I'm the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.